When I first sat down and I started preparing this video, I was going to have a cool little montage of me smashing bugs and just fucking shit up, to get everybody hyped. But for as much fun as you, me, and everyone else is having, this ain't it, little bro. And to be honest, this game's been gassed up enough already. Don't get me wrong, I've had some fun, but it's got its problems. Now, I couldn't really come up with a good way to start this video with a joke, so, here's one on me. Check out this side profile. That's fucking Overwatch silhouette material type of shit. Let me get my fucking toes out. Space Marine 2 is a third-person action game developed by Saber Interactive and published by Focus Entertainment. It was released to the general public on the 9th of September 2024. It currently has a Metascore of 82 and a user score of 81. As you would expect, it is a sequel to the first game that released 13 years prior, developed by Relic Entertainment and published by THQ. I was looking forward to the release of Space Marine 2 and as it turns out, I wasn't the only one. Fuck me! I had a lot of fond memories of playing the first game when I was younger.
I ain't finished with you yet, Space Marine!
How I managed to acquire it and how I managed to get it without my parents' knowledge is irrelevant. But, needless to say, the first game had a serviceable campaign that scratched that itch for Warhammer that I developed after throwing away countless hours of the Dawn of War games. It also helped it was much cheaper because, for some fucking reason, these bits of plastic crack are way too expensive. And there was no way that was going to fly in my household. So we fast forward a few years, and here we are. Our boy Titus is back and ready to serve a fresh load of the Emperor's will against the eco-terrorists of High Fleet Leviathan and the forces of Tzeentch, the chaos god of bullshittery and autism. It was my expectation that this game wasn't just going to stick the landing, but knock it out of the park. Between all the information that was coming out before release, the crazy graphics, the awesome gameplay, the endorsement of everyone who got a hold of the game early, we weren't just going to get Game of the Year. No. We were getting a return to old school. That's right, we're talking Halo, Nash's on Gears of War, maybe calling someone a racial slur in the COD lobbies. The Golden Age, okay? 10-hour campaign, PvE mode, PvP mode, all of which could be enjoyed with friends, and microtransactions. Get that shit out of here! So I looked past all the marketing gimmicks, past the pre-order links, and past the soy jack faces, and with a fucking tingle in my loins and twinkle in my eye, I put my money down for the Ultra Edition. And let's talk about that. At its core, this game is all about embodying the Space Marine power fantasy. But what is a Space Marine? Well, I could go over the 40 years of lore to give you an explanation, but I'll make this easy for you. Space Marines are 8 foot tall, muscle-bound, walking tanks with an unwavering, fanatical devotion for the God Emperor of mankind. At least 50% of the time. Mathematically speaking. Okay, you might need some additional context. But let me get you up to speed.
They shall be finest. These men give of themselves. Like clay, I shall show. They will be high like steep. In great armor shall I test. Untouched, they will have tactics, strength, and machine. So they may fall in the destiny. They are my Space Marines, and they shall know no fear.
Look, I know it's a lot, but on your feet, soldier. Come on, let's keep moving. You can find lore videos to help you sleep later, okay? In Space Marine 2, you will hack, slash, shoot, and stab, and otherwise render anything that isn't human, sometimes, into a red paste in the name of the Emperor. In the campaign mode, you'll do it with spectacle and purpose. In the PvE operations mode, you'll do it with friends. And in the PvP Eternal War mode, you'll do it to each other. There's no extensive exploration. There's no complex puzzle solving, okay? This game's about none of that shit. You will go where it tells you to go, you will kill anything that moves, and you will move on. And Space Marine 2 does this moderately well. Now, some of you might be thinking, brother, get the heavy flamer and purge this twat in holy fire. But bear with me a moment, alright? A little heresy never really hurt anybody, so hear me out. Without a doubt, this game has an aura, okay? It awakens something primal in you when you first start playing, alright? 1 minute you'll be shooting your big, massive fucking bolt gun, and then you snatch a Tyranid out of the air, rip him to pieces with your bare hands, and then whip out the chainsaw and start playing Operation. I don't think I need to explain to you that pretending to be a Space Marine is fun. That doing sick glory kills on people we don't have to feel bad about while screaming like a madman, making my pee-pee bigger. But just like the countless servants of the Imperium, this experience was not created equally. While I paint this picture of being an absolute Sigma, showing overwhelming testosterone in the face of danger, Space Marine 2's shallow gameplay, poor balance, and weird enemy design shatters your dreams of becoming one of the Emperor's finest space racists.
I'm the Emperor's top guy. What am I gonna do? The Emperor chose me to lead the revolution.
Again, some of you might be shocked to hear this and be thinking, well, no, I had a lot of fun with the game. I think it's really good. It reminds me of the old school. It's good. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's literally perfect. It's literally perfect.
Everything down to the last.
And to those of you, I say, congratulations. I don't care. Okay, this is my review. You go do your own elsewhere. Okay. After you've finished watching this, of course. I mean, you know, help a battle brother out. Please. But let me give you a brief summary of Space Marine 2's gameplay to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Starting with the shooting, first you aim, then you shoot. So far, so good. But you give it a couple of bullets and there you go. I mean, look at this. What is this? What is this balloon? I mean, I get it. These are powerful guns, but I mean, we're big guys. We should be able to take it. I mean, fuck me. This handles worse than the ball your girlfriend likes to ride on the weekends.
Hey, yo!
Moving on to melee now. To attack, you press R1 and R1 and R1 again. Riveting. For blocking and parrying, you press L1. And generous, and I do mean generous, block and parry windows aside, you notice anything familiar about any of the gameplay here? Well, you should, because this shit is absolutely fucking everywhere. But let's say you make a little fucky wucky, and the rude Marines that like to mog you all the time, they slap you around a little bit. Well, you know what? That's fine, because that's what your health and armor's for. And hey, it happens to the best of us. Space Marine 2's got a health recovery mechanic, kind of like what you see in Bloodborne. Someone hits you, you hit them right back, and then you get some health. Simple. But there's only one way to get your armor back, and that's with glory kills. When you deal enough damage to an enemy, they'll start to flash red, and then that's when you know it's time. It's time to rip and tear, because that's what Daddy made you to do, and what Daddy wants, Daddy gets. You could also just dodge everything as well, but I mean, that would require being good at the game. The gameplay mechanics and overall gameplay loop in Space Marine 2 is simple and uninspiring. Simple doesn't mean bad, it just means that there's nothing technically demanding about any of this. I mean, you could really play this game with your eyes closed, and you know, there's nothing wrong with that, it's just a bit boring. It wouldn't be too much of a problem if there was a little bit more depth to the gameplay, but, you know, Space Marine 2 is old school. It hasn't innovated from action games 10 years ago, which is a shame because you'd figure it'd be a lot more interesting in practice. I really like the seamless nature of switching between delivering thunderous backshots and then whipping out the chopper to start blasting.
I don't know if they wanted money or they wanted something more sexual. That's a lucky thing. I had my pieces. Your pieces are good enough. Anyway, I started blasting. Die, scum!
I also really like the concept of gun strikes as a way to reward careful timing, but they don't deal enough damage and provide no sustain. Likewise, the health recovery mechanic isn't that useful. You can't restore health as quickly as you lose it, unless you're using a gun or an execution, because melee is underpowered. Yeah, now's a good time to talk about game balance. Space Marine 2's balancing is a bit, how you going? But what do I mean by this exactly? Well, increasing the difficulty in Space Marine 2 means you take more damage and deal less. And also changes your dodge windows. What? People sometimes call this artificial difficulty and feel it can be a bad way to balance a game. I say can because sometimes it just works. And then when it doesn't just work, you get Space Marine 2's problem. On higher difficulties, there's only 5 guns that stop enemies from feeling like bullet sponges. And one of them is because you abuse the grenade launcher as if it's 2011. Get a load of this guy. You know, if this was you back in the day, fuck you. I'm not even joking when I say I'm actually not that familiar with most of the guns, because every time I would try a new one in the campaign, it just felt like fucking ass. And shit, man, first impressions matter for a reason. Initially, I was hoping this wouldn't be a problem in the operations mode, but yeah, no, that didn't happen. But aside from that, the mechanics designed around maintaining survivability in combat are just not effective. Enemies will tear through your armor as if it's made of paper mache. Like, for Emperor's sake, you've got guys that in the deep Warhammer lore are dedicated trash mobs, able to smack you around like a limp dick pussy who didn't need his vitamin gummies. An Emperor forbid if they hit you from a distance. Fuck me. In the campaign, weapons bad at the beginning stay bad all the way through, since there's no way to upgrade them. And while this problem is somewhat remedied in the operations mode, it's more of a double-edged power sword than anything, because it has its own problems. Okay, first off, look at this. 50% of the total damage increase I can get from a weapon by upgrading it comes from its final upgrade. And that's not even to mention that the whole process of getting there is weird, but I'll come back to that later. Second, let's do a little thought experiment. I've got in my hands a max level bolt pistol. With this bolt pistol, I can one-shot my Norris enemies by shooting them in the head. I can't do that with a max level chainsaw. Consider now that I can stand back from the safety of range and left click until the gene stealers come home. Whereas with my chainsword, I gotta get all up close and personal and run the risk of getting goatsied by some demons. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? The difficulty in Space Marine 2 comes from the devs just messing with numbers. It's an ongoing battle, and it's a battle that they're losing. Since release, they've patched the game a few times. Sometimes I make everybody happy, and sometimes I don't. Honestly, I'm getting whiplash trying to keep up. I can't do it anymore. I've just come to the conclusion that these guys don't know how to balance the game. First off, the magnitude of the changes that they've been able to make with respect to nerfs and buffs is just ridiculous. Then just look at the numbers that they're citing and how they're interpreting them. A 60% win rate on Ruthless difficulty in the first week. Then fast forward 3 weeks and introduce something that gives us a little bit of survivability so we're not getting fucking torn to shreds in melee. And holy shit, the win rate skyrockets to 80%. The analysis in the 4.1 patch notes is just dumb. It's not taking into consideration that maybe after 3 fucking weeks people got better at playing the game. But alas, what do? Introduce nerfs, buffs to enemies, and a mechanic that nobody asked for.
1 week later.
Hey pal, you just blowing from Stupid Town?
Sorry.
To quote, numbers aren't everything. Well mate, you hit the nail on the head because I couldn't put it better myself. Aside from this, any positive changes that they have introduced haven't been applied to the campaign, and there's no indication that they're even looking at melee weapons. And in the meantime, while they're struggling to get all this sorted, we're just hanging around with a fucking plasma pistol up our asses. If you need more proof that they don't really know what they're doing, all you have to do is look at the changes that they've been applying and then realize that these are being applied to lower difficulties as well. So now you've got the experience of lower level players looking like this. Whoopsie daisy, guys, don't worry, we'll fix it. Better yet, here's what we'll do. We'll set up public test servers and use that as a scapegoat. So then that way, we can introduce half-baked changes and you can't get upset with us. Yeah! Look, I'll make this simple for everyone. Fighting bullet sponges isn't fun. If you want to make the game harder and keep it fun at the same time, the challenge needs to come in a different form. But the Swab Tech engine, that's a great idea. Why don't we just add in more enemies and make them weaker? Couldn't that be the solution to our problems? Well, I ain't gonna sugarcoat it, but the Swarm engine isn't all it's cracked up to be. Or at the very least, it's not being used to its full potential. You know all of those cool hold back the horde moments the game likes to throw at you every 5 fucking seconds? Well, you know what? They aren't even genuine. They're all fucking fake. The developers have confirmed it. Shooting enemies before they approach you doesn't do anything. You're gonna fight the amount of enemies the game wants you to, and you're gonna like it. So, you know what? It may not even be possible to add more enemies in the game. And even if they can, this has to be tempered by the fact that they need to ensure consistency across all the platforms, because this is a multi-platform title, in case you forgot, for some reason. Shit, well no fucking wonder there's no horde mode. Yet what I find most interesting, regardless of whether I'm right or wrong about how the game should be balanced, is that the game launched in this state to begin with. The issues I raise with respect to difficulty aren't because the game is hard, it's not. It shatters the power of fantasy faster than my ego than when a girl calls me short. Bet they didn't have this problem in Rome. Or Ultramar. And if you didn't buy Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 to play as a Space Marine, then why the fuck did you buy this game? Meanwhile, although all the enemies are faithful recreations of everyone's favourite unoriginal sci-fi bug horde, Dusty Boys and so on, they're simultaneously uninspiring and frustrating to fight against. While looking great from a visual perspective, they're just missing that impact, you know? You'll fight a Lictor the same way you'll fight a Terminator, just minus the rocket spin. But as for the enemies that do vary the gameplay, boy, do I need to explain how frustrating it is to fight an enemy that you can't hit with your melee when you're out of ammo? Do I need to tell you how angry it makes me to hit an enemy, to watch them teleport all around the map with iframes? Do I have to explain how frustrating it is to have enemies drop shit all over the fucking screen so you can't move? And do I have to inform you on how fucking infuriating it is to have guys with shields smaller than my groin plate, capable of eating swings from my thunder? No, I don't think so. I can just show you. Space Marine 2 once again follows the story of everyone's favourite blueberry, Dimitri and Titus. Set 200 years after getting cancelled for heresy, our story begins with Titus during his service in the Death Watch, which is essentially the legally distinct Space Marine Suicide Squad. Their mission? Deploy a chemical weapon to slow the Tyranid assault on the death world of Kadaku. And you know what? They actually pull it off. Everyone is killed in action, and Titus is left on the brink of death after going, nah, I'd win, to a fucking carnifex. However, to nobody's surprise, the Ultramarines show up and save Titus and perform the Rubicon surgery, transforming him into a Primaris Space Marine. If you don't understand the significance of such an action, I implore you to bring this up with any fan of the tabletop. They will confirm this is just the greatest thing ever. Anyway, before our boy is fully welcomed back into the fold, he comes under the watchful eye of the company chaplain, which is essentially a battle pope with anger issues. He's also assigned 2 new squad mates. First up, we got Gadriel. He's a whiny bitch.
Lieutenant, upon completion of this mission, I request transfer to another squad.
Shut up, bitch!
Then we got Chiron. He's a mostly level-headed guy and... oh. Yeah, okay. As the battle for Kadaku rages on, unseen enemies will reveal themselves. Specifically, the Thousand Suns Chaos Space Marine Legion, led by the Chaos Sorcerer, Imra. You know these guys are evil because they look cool. So aside from having to face his inner demons and work out all that tension with his battle brothers, the boys in blue will have to face literal demons from the immaterial plane, all while trying to uncover their convoluted plot, which seems inextricably tied to a shadow from Titus's past. I'm not gonna lie, on my first playthrough, I thought the story of Space Marine was pretty good. Don't get me wrong, as far as video game stories goes, this one's alright, it's not bad, it's just, the first game exists. And if you've played the first game, you know, this is just a repeat of the first game's story. Now, while Space Marine 2's story just makes you want to have passionate cuddle with the homies,
Brother, I am pinned here!
and affirm humanity's right to conquer the stars,
Oh god. I'd let you wax my armor.
it's unfortunately held back by its lack of character development and overall poor use of the source material. When you stop and think about what are the themes of Space Marine 2's story, what comes to mind? To me, I'm thinking courage, duty, honor, brotherhood, honesty, you know, just to name a few. I'm unsure whether these are common occurrences in Warhammer 40k stories, but you know what? I'm digging it. Not bad. I really enjoy that the story tries to emphasize these values and, you know, add a little bit of humanity back into these muscle-bound tank brains.
I'm confident in this game's overt masculinity. Suspiciously overt masculinity.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job at adding something meaningful into the game's story, which, you know, is almost ridiculous when you say it out loud, considering the gameplay revolves around, you know, just doing this. Unfortunately, it's not all battle bukakis with the battle brothers at the battle barge.
I am not gay. I have relationships with women. And sex with men. And I got news for you. That means you're gay.
Is there battle backshots?
No, for real.
While the story has these really touching aspects to it, it's let down by its main cast. Out of everyone, Titus has the most character development, and that's really saying something. Understandably, Titus spends the whole game fucking seething after being held prisoner by the Inquisition for 200 years. Pooh, you bastard! On top of that, he's just vindicated at every single development during the game's story. Sure, at the climax of the story, Titus is able to use the lessons he's learned from the first game to overcome and work through all that frustration with his battle brothers, and as wonderful as it is to see these walking slabs of hunker sort their shit out, that's it. I don't really have anything to say about Gadriel and Chiron, mainly on the basis that there's nothing to talk about. Gadriel is just a Leandros clone with better hair, and Chiron, you know, his hand isn't the only thing that's missing. It's his whole fucking character. You know, this guy is 10,000 years old. 10,000! That's 10k! Out of the 40! Why wasn't this brought up? Like, you know, that schizo moment he has, it actually makes sense because before he was put in a fucking cryotube a la fucking Futurama style, he watched his homeworld burn. This isn't brought up anywhere. What? Now, can someone tell me where the Grimdark is supposed to be? I mean, where's my Kriegsman? Where's my corpse starch? Where's my deep introspective reflection on the consequences of technological stagnation at the heads of dogmatic faith and zealotry? And where's the Homunculaba? Oh, okay, don't worry about that last one. I'm not asking to see degenerate or heinous shit. I'm just trying to understand the absence of grim darkness from this Warhammer 40k story, because it seems to me like they were scared to add even anything remotely like that in there. It comes across as more of a feel-good military war hero movie than a fucking 40k story. And I mean, sure, maybe this is supposed to serve as everyone's first introduction into Warhammer 40k, but I mean, come on, really? But what's even more egregious than that is the absolute lack of anything interesting to do in the story from a gameplay perspective. I'm not even joking, this is all you do in the story. Go here, shoot, assemble. Go here, shoot, assemble. Go here, shoot, assemble. That's it. I'm serious. The only unique thing you can do in this story is when Titus is just like, fuck it, we ball, and drops from low orbit. And that segment lasts like 2 minutes. There is nothing unique about what you do. It's so boring. And it's such a shame because there's some fucking good source material out there they can make use of. Yes, all the blood in my body pooled in a singular location when we held this ground in the name of the Primarch. Yes, storming a literal gateway to hell with the boys was a vibe. And yes, a dreadnought soloing a Hellbrute, then soloing a Helldrake, and then calling out a Demon Primarch as if it's just Tuesday was fucking hilarious.
Fine sons of knights. Lead me to the slaughter.
What do all of these things have in common? They're showing us cool shit. Yes, they are cinematic. Yes, they are visual spectacles. but they are boring from a gameplay perspective. What are we doing? Standing on a hill, shooting. He could do nothing and it would play out the same. What have we got here? Walking simulators. Walking simulators. In 2024. In my AAA game. In my 40k AAA game. This is going to be a hot take, but I think Space Marine 2's story is mid. Sure, it's fun if you turn your brain off and then play with mates, but that goes for anything. There's nothing special or unique about Space Marine 2's campaign. It's got no replay value. Fuck, you don't even get anything special for your troubles. It's not even a flex to say you've beaten it on the hardest difficulty by yourself. I mean, shit, man. There's easier ways to say you hate yourself. Right off the bat, I want to say I'm not a graphics whore, but I can appreciate a good looking game, same as I can appreciate a good looking bloke. I'm currently running a 4080 Super and a Ryzen 7800 X3D, and this shit looks dope. Gameplay issues aside, this is a fantastic looking fucking game. The only issues I noticed were that things looked a bit funny as things initially loaded in, the lighting and the textures were off, but other than that, that's it. Whether you're stomping through the jungle on Kadaku or slicing up heretics on Avaraks, it looks amazing. Actually, you know what? There is one thing. An FOV slider. That would be nice, but wouldn't want to mess with that artistic vision, right? Whether it's the sound of you pulling the trigger to fire a bolter, carving up a Xeno with a chainsaw, or your footsteps pounding the pavement on the way to fuck something up, it all sounds very satisfying. However, some of the audio cues can be a bit hard to pick up. Amongst the chaos of melee combat, it's hard to hear the audio cue for an attack coming in. I mean, come on. If you're gonna do what everyone else is doing, at least do it properly. The audio mix is just terrible. And the assault class makes no sound whatsoever. Jetpack goes up, nothing. Hovering in the air, nothing. So 1 minute, you're busy worrying how to get that fucking stanky ass noble bulwark off point without getting fucking retinal damage, and then you'll get fucking one-shot by an edgelord out of nowhere. Amazing. I've tried to use the music where I can throughout the video, but I mean, to be honest, some of it's a bit generic and uninspiring. It's got those heavy militaristic drums and choir vocals that you'd expect, but I mean, come on. It's got some stiff competition. It does have that one song that goes pretty hard though. It's the title theme, you know, the one that goes dun 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 dun. That goes fucking hard. My favorite aspect of the sound design though has to be the voice acting. It's well done across the board. Whether it's Titus's stalwart authoritative tone, the monotone expression of Straban, or the overtly villainous Chaos Space Marines. It's all amazingly well done. Sure, everyone makes a big deal about the guy on the Baneblade and his speech, and I mean, sure, whatever, I mean, I didn't really give a fuck. My favourite performance though was Marnius Calgar. I mean, just look at this guy fucks. Sounds like a grizzled 80s action hero movie, you know, it's kind of like when you're playing a game and you're with the protagonist from the first game, you know what I mean? Like, this guy just has an aura. And since we're talking about things the game does well, let's talk about the world design. You only have to look at this game for a moment to see that it just oozes Warhammer. You know, you see all that cool artwork online about the epic battles, insane character design, and that esoteric blend between sci-fi and dogmatic religion. Yeah, well, this game does that, and it makes it come to life. For some people, that would be an impossible task, but for Saber, they brought the world of Warhammer 40,000 to life. And as far as what I can see, other fans of the grimdark future also agree. The grand scale of what Saber has been able to create, combined with all those little details, do a fantastic job at transporting you to the world of the 41st millennium. But whether that's a positive or a negative entirely depends on your opinion of the setting, and I know some of you might think that and just go, what are you talking about? As if I'd buy a Warhammer game if I wasn't interested. And that's a fair point, but to that I say, most of us live in free countries, and we can do what we want with our money. The franchise itself has been around for a while, and while some parts of it really do adhere to that rule of cool, some things just look fucking goofy, as if they've been kicked along and people have been too scared to make any changes. Just look at the bolters. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Okay, can you tell me what the difference is between these two guns in terms of how they're supposed to function? Because I got no idea. The only thing I know is that apparently they shoot bullets the size of Red Bull cans, and I mean, Shit. Oh, yeah, we got props and shit now. Talk about increasing production value. We got props. I've enjoyed a bit of Warhammer content throughout my time, and while I think the story doesn't make the best use of the source material, it brings it to life in a way that we haven't seen before. There's no doubt that the way that this universe has been manifested will meet and exceed the expectation for many players. Speaking of players, from the highest of high to the lowest of low, there's no reason for you to suffer throughout this game alone when you can do it with others. Let's talk about the multiplayer. Space Marine 2 has multiplayer baked into all of its offerings. All you gotta do is find 2 other of the Emperor's finest space racists, and it's on. Shame about the split screen though. I'm sure that's just some long forgotten technology waiting to be found in a STC somewhere in the galaxy. Or, you know, the publisher could have just wanted an excuse to sell us extra copies, but what the fuck do I know?
I'm battle prolapsing.
I covered the campaign before, and playing with friends doesn't change how it plays out. They just get to control Chiron and Gadriel. What it does do though, is spare you the trouble of having to play with those fucking bots, because they are useless no matter what mode you're playing on. Oh boy. A new feature included in Space Marine 2 is the PvE Operations mode. In the Operations mode, you will take control of one of 6 Space Marines, each unique in both appearance and ability. These guys are essentially the B team. But Titus and crew tasked with doing shit they can't be fucked with throughout the main story. And that forms the basis for all the missions that you'll be doing on repeat. At the time of recording, there are currently 7 missions, with the latest one being added mid-October. There's more planned for release, but as for how many, I don't fucking know. Consult the roadmap. I think the operations are a really nice addition. You know, they serve as mini campaign missions that you can play with friends, with your own custom Space Marine. It's a really good concept. All the classes in the operations mode are based on different types of Space Marines. You know, you've got the Bulwark, which is the Blade Guard veteran, the Assault, which is the Assault Intercessor, and if you want to fuck around with a big, heavy, fuck-off bolt gun, you use the Heavy, which is the Heavy Intercessor. But despite being a really cool concept, they're flawed. They exacerbate the problems with the game's already poor design and introduce problems of their own. If you were expecting these missions to play like Left 4 Dead but in Warhammer 40,000, so just Darktide with Space Marines, they kind of do that, but they're worse. Their design is flawed, right? You want to know how flawed? This is how flawed. So flawed, I couldn't even get a fucking match. For the first few weeks, this is what you would see every single time. And it's not as simple as turning it offline, because you know what? If you turn it offline, your progress does not get saved. It doesn't get saved. Anyway, when you do manage to get a game, there's nothing stopping players from completing them in half the time they're supposed to take. If a Zangor making you feel like a little bitch broke your immersion, I don't know how you're going to handle looking at this. There is no systems in place to stop you from just completely destroying the whole structure of these missions.
Came in the year.
The missions also suffer from the same basic gameplay loop as seen in the campaign, but hey, if that didn't bother you, I'm sure another couple hundred hours of this won't bother you. Though to be fair, there is some attempt to spice things up a little bit. Sometimes the mission objectives progress faster, sometimes they progress slower, and you know what, it's something, and something's better than nothing. But I wouldn't get too excited though. People only play half of the fucking missions anyway because they don't want to play against Chaos. Can't imagine why. You're also limited to 1 class per game, which, you know, makes sense and often leads to funny situations that just look like this.
Dio! ほう、向かってくるのか。逃げずにこのディオに近づいてくるのか。せっかく祖父のジョセフが私のザワールドの正体を試験終了チャイム直前まで問題を解いている受験生のような必死こいた気分で教えてくれたというのに。近づかなきゃてめえをぶちのめせないんだな。ほうほう。では十分近づくがよい。
And it's funny the first couple times it happens, but I don't really have all day. Or maybe I do, because the missions won't fucking load. Fuck. The issues I raised earlier with respect to balancing also find their way in the operations mode. Despite having the ability to upgrade your Marine with class abilities and weapon perks, they don't really rectify the problem. A lot of the perks don't really impact gameplay in any meaningful way, and the ones that do probably should just be base features. Well, that's actually being generous and assuming that the perks work to begin with. Some classes seem to have everything going for them, and some perks are way overtuned, and others have absolutely nothing. Yet none of this really matters, because outside the classes that are just way too strong, most of your power is just going to come from the weapon you're using. The weapon upgrade system in Space Marine 2, while interesting, is underwhelming. It's really good at rewarding you for spending time with your weapon, as that's how you get weapon mastery points, which you then use to increase your effectiveness with said weapon. What it doesn't do well is involve an unnecessary level of grind in order to get to the highest tier of that weapon. So how progression is intended to work in the operations mode is you start off with the lower difficulty missions. You play those, you get familiar with how things work. You level up your class and find some armory data. Using this armory data, you level up your weapon to the next tier, which then prompts you to try the next difficulty and then repeat the process. If you play the way the game intends you to, missions will take about 30 to 40 minutes to complete. And if you account for the time you're going to spend fucking up, because that'll happen, it's going to take you about 20 hours or so to level up a class to max level. Naturally, some people might want to try harder difficulties first in order to speed track their progress, and that's fine because there's nothing stopping you from doing that. But just be prepared for an uphill battle, because if we circle back and remember how the difficulty sliders work, and then compound that with the fact that your weapon damage is tied directly to what tier it's at, well, you've got a recipe for a jolly good fucking time now, don't you? Okay, so what point am I trying to make about this supposed grind? Well, remember, there's only 4 fucking missions that anyone wants to play at any given time, and they all revolve around the same boring gameplay loop of shoot, kill, assemble. And then you look at your rewards. What do you get? You can get a pretty skin for your gun. And most shocking of all, the opportunity to somewhat level the playing field by increasing the amount of damage you do. Yeah, I dare say it's a little bit repetitive. And if I'm being honest, just because I can dress up as a gay vampire while I do it, doesn't exactly make any of this go down any easier. But much like the structure of the missions themselves, the progression in the operations mode is also flawed. While I was playing the operations mode, I felt like I was being punished for switching between different classes of weapons. See, they all level up independently, which means if you want to try a different weapon or a different class, you have to start again from scratch. And if you're anything like me, you enjoy a little bit of variety, mix things up a little bit every now and again in your life, this really fucking sucks. Furthermore, when you consider that most of these guns are borderline unusable with their poor balancing, you're further incentivized to just stick with what you know. And I hate this because it's almost forcing you into using what works and not try anything different. And yeah, I get it. I understand the concept of handicapping myself to, try and implement a challenge. But if I wanted to challenge myself, I'm not playing this game. Are you kidding me? And this gets even worse when you factor in how armory data affects this system. As I said before, you need armory data to get to the next tier for your weapons, but you can also use it to circumvent some of the grind by granting you instant access to mastery points. So not only if you want to avoid feeling like an underpowered pussy, you consistently want to get armory data, you're better off just playing better classes with better weapons. This is all predicated, of course, on the idea that you're not being carried through these missions, in which case, use whatever the fuck you want. But that's not all the armory data mechanic does. It also creates this really weird situation where you're supposed to take an underpowered weapon into a higher difficulty for the chance of getting an armory data to upgrade it to the next tier. And I say chance because armory data isn't guaranteed. You have to fight a boss or you have to find it. Now, between there being so many different places where an armory data can be found, it's actually quite annoying. And sure, the community's done a pretty good job at nailing it down, but how many people are going to take advantage of that? And second, because of the random enemy seed and random enemy spawns, there's a chance you don't even fight a fucking boss. So you can, if you're assuming you do this mission properly, you can spend nearly 40 minutes playing and get nothing out of it. And you have to do it again. Just consider that hypothetical. And I mention it again to stress its importance, but just imagine what it looks like to bring an underpowered weapon, say white tier, into ruthless difficulty and go off against a Carnifex. Ruthless level Carnifex. It looks something like this. Do you maybe understand why people do this now? I'd rather spend 2 hours doing this than fucking 20 hours playing the game normally. Now, all of this isn't actually present in the PvP Eternal War mode. And that's because it's got its own fucking problems. Space Marine 2's PvP currently consists of 3 game modes. We got King of the Hill, Domination, and Team Deathmatch. There's 6v6 matches, with one side taking on the Space Marines we see in the Operations mode, and the other taking on the Heretic Astartes from the Traitor Space Marine Legions. Now, if this offering seems a little, underwhelming and seems like there's not a lot of content there, don't think about it too hard. I mean, after all, comparison is the thief of joy. In the PvP, all the values for health, armor, and damage are all tuned differently to even the playing field, more or less. Weapon selection is again tied to class, but this time they introduce a grind, meaning you have to level up to unlock these weapons that you might already be familiar with. As a way to provide players a sense of pride and accomplishment. Now, I can't really comment on the balance of some of these weapons since I haven't unlocked half of them. No, I'm not doing that. But what I did find out the hard way was that the Power Fist could one-shot you with practically no wind-up, which was really frustrating. But hey, they got there eventually. It only took them a month after release to find that out. What I can comment on, however, is that, some of these classes, they might need a little bit of care, love, and attention, if you would. Get the tech priest to look at them, for another couple hundred fucking years, because you know what? Straight 1-for-1, porting these things over was not a good idea. Firstly, allowing people to get their class ability back on respawn is just, no. Auspex every 5 seconds, chapter banner every fucking 30 seconds, bulwarks holding their shields up indefinitely. Why? It just creates these interactions that are just not fun to play against. And speaking of interactions that just aren't fun, what about the melee? Guys, maybe it's just me, but it just doesn't feel right. To me, it just doesn't play right. Melee in the PvP boils down to essentially whoever swings first wins. Unless they're using a weapon with a cheap one-hit kill. There's no iframes on the dodging, so just don't even try. And even if you think you're far enough away, some of these moves have got some pretty good tracking. Of course, you can block some of these attacks, but again, it's just a weird interaction. I understand that by now people have worked out the tech with melee fighting and how to weave in attacks in between blocks and all of that. But in my experience, that's not how things play out. That's in a controlled scenario. In a real game, blocking just buys time for your teammates to come through and win a kill, or for someone else's teammate to come and kill you. It's beyond me why there isn't more of an incentive to use melee in the PvP. Aside from the cheap one-shot kills. It just comes across as an all or nothing gambit. And that's even if you bother with the melee to begin with. I've got so many clips of others and myself doing it. We run at someone trying to, whack them with the sword as if they're just gonna stop shooting. There's very few attacks that stagger people. If you're hitting someone while they're shooting you, they don't suffer a penalty. So you're just engaging in a high risk maneuver to do the same thing that they're doing, but they're probably just gonna have better success. What encapsulates it for me is if a vanguard hits you with the grapple, they're not going to whip out the combat knife and start stabbing you, London style. They're just going to shoot you because that's what works. But to be fair, they're being consistent because it's almost impressive how they've made melee feel like absolute dog shit across every single one of these game modes. It's almost impressive how they've done it. The only positive I can think of is that the assault really feels the way that it should. My boy is up in the air, just having a jolly good time. Silently hovering, waiting to pounce on you. The grenade spam is also real. Bro, I love the shot grenades. It's so fun to just drop them on someone and watch them scramble around like a fucking idiot. It's fun. It's fun. What I don't like is being tested for epilepsy in my spare time. I'm fucked up enough as it is. Also, you guys want to know something else about the multiplayer that everyone doesn't want to talk about in their reviews? The cheaters. There's fucking cheaters everywhere. They were in there from day one. Day one! And they say, no, you can't cheat. And I say, yes, wait. Watch me cheat. They say, no, you can't break the anti-cheat. And I break the anti-cheat. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because no one could break the anti-cheat better than me. No, you know what I mean? We also added in a sparring arena, which is kind of helpful since that lets us study the interactions in the PvP mode. We can't use our abilities, which might have been helpful. And perhaps this is a stand-in for private PvP lobbies because those aren't planned. And also, you can't have a party of 6, which is what you need to play a game in the PvP. You can only have parties of 3. Because fuck you, that's why. Lastly, there's the feature that everybody was excited for. The customization.
All this glorious customization I've done.
Brother. Brother, have you said your prayers, brother? Brother.
I sucked off the machine gun this morning.
What did he say?
Man, oh man, were people excited for this. Whether you wanted to be a first company blueberry, kleptomaniac, crayon consumer, they had it all.
Tell you, the joke was I'm an LGBTQ Space Marine officer.
No, you're a crayon marine.
Crayon Marine?
Yes. Look at
crayon
you. You're a crayon marine.
What's that meant to me? A
You
crayon marine.
You eat your crayons because the Emperor tells you to.
Yeah.
Sure, some of those nicer shades of blue might have been locked behind a paywall, but I mean, come on. As a Game Workshop customer, you must be used to that by now. And if not, you'll get used to it, bitch. And yeah, while the customization is nice, Emperor knows I've spent plenty of time familiarizing myself with the intricacies of Space Marine heraldry. It just kind of seems like all the armor pieces are, the same, And for the ones that are different, what am I choosing? I'm choosing which side of the fucking greave my purity seal is going to be on. What is this? Like, you can't tell me that these don't look the same, or that there's minimal difference between them. I just want to make a comparison here. Do you remember in the good old days in like Halo, in Modern Warfare, when you had to complete certain achievements or challenges in order to unlock, armor sets, emblems, titles, stuff like that? Something that actually gave people a sense of pride and accomplishment? Well, before the introduction of the lethal difficulty, none of that exists, and yeah, even though there's now some unique helmets, like what the fuck is this shit? No one cares about this fucking crap. And also, the Heretic Astartes, so theoretically 50% of the time that you're playing the game, there is no customization for the Heretic Astartes. You cannot customize the Chaos Space Marines. And I mean, sure, that might not bother you, because maybe you're just expecting for them to sell it to you later, which I guarantee they'll be more than happy to do. These modes are supposed to keep people interested in playing the game for longer than a couple of weeks after they finish the campaign. But given their current state and Saber's recent actions, I don't know how they're going to retain any of the player base. I don't understand how this game has any staying power. Maybe Saber can pull it off. Maybe they can turn things around and fix it. But the amount of time, effort, money that will go involved in putting all this together, all while these guys are supposed to be able to keep up with the deadlines that they set for themselves on the roadmap and add content beyond this, I'm not confident that they'll be able to pull it off. Now, I'm hesitant to talk about the technical parts of the game since I'm not really that kind of guy, but I'll take everyone else's word for it. At launch, there were countless people complaining about poor optimization. I mean, I got pretty beefy specs, so it didn't really bother me, but I'm not ignorant to the fact that this was a problem for a lot of people. By the throne, I could not imagine what low-end PC and console performance must have been like. All I'm going to say is that praise the Omnisite that this motherfucker is installed on an SSD, because the amount of loading screens you have to go through, it's actually dystopian. And that's assuming that nothing else goes wrong. We're talking server connection issues, infinite loading screens, getting kicked from a match as soon as you join. Need I go on? Also, if I ran this thing for anything longer than a couple of hours, it would run like complete dog shit. I mean, look, it's 2024. Trying to find a mostly optimized game on launch is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. But fuck me, man. And while we're talking about technical performance, I'd be remiss not to mention the bugs and crashes. And no, I'm not talking about those bugs. I'm talking about the real bugs, okay? I'm talking taking multiple instances of damage. I'm talking enemies shooting shit through the walls. I'm talking enemies shooting so much shit on the floor, it tanks your FPS. Come on, man! Lastly, there was one bug I would encounter every single time throughout my nearly 100 hours of gameplay. And that was the game crashing every single time I tried to close it. I mean, shit, man, if you want me to keep playing, maybe make it a little bit fucking interesting. This ain't it, man. And yeah, true, while most of this is going to be fixed over time, if not already, it doesn't excuse the fact that the game launched in this state to begin with. The only reason I bring any of this up is because I want to do it justice and I want to bring it to people's attention. To be honest, most of the problems I see people complain about didn't really bother me all that much. I had stable frame rate. I was able to play on Ultra with no problems. Didn't sweat or overheat my CPU. But that doesn't mean that these weren't problems that real people were facing. And I just want to do it justice when I talk about this, even though I'm not very knowledgeable. Because, you know, some people, they just kind of want to be ignorant and pretend like it's not a problem. I think we've come to the point in the video where I tell you what I really think about Space Marine 2. You, got your Guardian Relic handy, Battle Brothers? I think Space Marine 2 is mid. It's average. It's definitely not Game of the Year material. It's good casual fun. If you turn your brain off, and yeah, it's fun with the boys. But I also think it's completely representative of everything wrong with modern games, and I do not understand the level of praise it's receiving. And most concerning of all, I do not understand why people are turning a blind eye and just accepting it. Overall, Space Marine 2 is an unfinished game. It's not a return to old school, and it's littered with modern gaming business practices that we seem to loathe elsewhere, but not here. Even before the game was released, there were signs that there were issues. The official release had already been pushed back, and the multiplayer beta was cancelled before release because the developers needed more time. That was the reason that they provided. Since release, we've watched the devs patch the game, switching everyone's opinions between "holy shit, this is ass" to "fuck yes, we are so back, boys." We have endured poor optimization, poor server performance, and debilitating bugs and crashes that by all means should have been rectified before release. But it's not even just the obvious things that indicate that this was underbaked. It's the little details like chapter colors being wrong, not being able to delete my presets, and my presets not carrying over to the multiplayer. But we don't even have to look at what's in the game to know that it was unfinished. Just look at the roadmap that they love to show off. How much of this do you think was content originally meant to be included at release? This, most certainly. I can only imagine how much of this was meant to be included, because at the very least, there should be more content in the game than what is currently available. The campaign is 7 hours at best. There's barely enough to keep you playing the operations mode, and I mean, come on. 3 maps, 3 PvP modes? Are you fucking kidding me? The state this game is in is far below the reasonable standard for a AAA title. And I mean, fuck man, they're charging us for it. Although now that I'm thinking about it, you know, maybe this is actually par for the course when it comes to AAA games. Regardless, so much work is required to bring this into an acceptable state, and I can't understand why we should tolerate it, because yet again, we are forced to put our faith in a developer to fix the game over time, as opposed to, I don't know, what, giving us a complete package on release? What am I thinking? So I ask you, dear viewer, why? Why should we, in the year 2024, have to wait for a AAA title to be released before it is finished? Before we get what we paid for? Even if your faith in the developers hasn't been shaken by how they've handled things post-launch, what actual guarantee is there that they'll follow through on their promise to add in all of this content or even fix the game? Oh, because they said so. Well, that's fine. We got nothing to worry about then. Do you want to know something else they said? Well, here's the CEO saying that the reason they didn't charge anything less than AAA price was because they were worried people were going to compare it to games of similar quality. And quality is an interesting choice of words, if ever I heard them. Revolutionary concept incoming, but games are made for a profit these days, yeah? We all understand that. So what happens when they decide that this game is no longer profitable? What happens when they decide that the return no longer justifies the cost? Do you think they'll still stay true to their word then? Space Marine 2 may remind you of old school games, and it's almost ironic that anyone makes this comparison. If this game came out 10 years ago, not only would it be considered below average, but most of the criticisms from the first game could easily be levied here as well. And don't bother doing an in-depth comparison to other games that came out around the same time, because it's going to make this look even worse. But it's not just me or other gamers that are making this comparison to old school games or even throwing that term out there. No. This comes from the CEO himself. Look at this comment that he left on Nurgle's Chosen Champions video. This game would have an addictive gameplay loop if it was balanced correctly. There is no overt messaging or unnecessary politics in the game's story, but it's also a mediocre utilization of the source material at best. There is a distinct lack of the grimdark element you would expect from a 40k story, and the only reason for which I can think of is that it was a commercial decision as opposed to a creative one, in order to ensure mass market appeal. Seriously, compare what this game offered on launch to what any old school COD, Gears of War, or Halo offered. This game is bare bones by comparison. And you say you don't understand any of the games that come out these days, but I mean, are you sure about that? Because you didn't seem to have any problem copying what they like to do. Like, you somehow turned the game into a live service. You've got cosmetics plans for the next year at the very least. You used early access and other shitty exclusives to bait people into pre-ordering. Although exclusives is actually a bad word, because then they were later repackaged and sold separately. The campaign is full of sequel and DLC bait. It's unnecessarily grindy, unoptimized on launch. Internet access is required, and you somehow install the Epic online services when I download the game. Whoa. That can't be right. What's next? Are they going to tell me that when I actually purchase the game, I'm not actually buying it, I'm getting a digital license or something? Fucking, and then they own the rights to this video? Like, get the fuck out of here. Look, when I bought something old school, and this one's not necessarily related to you, alright, this isn't necessarily your fault. Not only could I hold it in my hands, but it was worth more than the money my mum and dad could scrounge together to try and make me happy. I understand you and your team worked very hard on this, okay? I can only imagine the amount of sweat, maybe some blood, probably some tears that went into creating this. And I also appreciate that there are things outside of your control, all right? I can only imagine that the publishers got their fist up your ass, all right? It wouldn't surprise me if that's the case. But you missed the mark, okay? I'm sorry, bro. Like, this isn't a good game. It's really not. And it needs a lot of work in order to make it better. I'm not denying that there's fun to be had with Space Marine 2. I wouldn't have played the game for as long as I have, and Emperor knows it would not have sold 4.5 million copies, although I would love to know where they got this figure from, if it wasn't doing at least a couple of things right. But as I've mentioned throughout the video, there's just so many questionable elements that detract from the fun factor and a real lack of content for a AAA title. For this reason, I cannot recommend Space Marine 2 in its current condition. Wait until the game goes on sale a year or two down the line when content's been added to the game and they've hopefully brought it into a better place. If you're a 40k fan or you're just looking for some casual fun, I imagine you're going to enjoy yourself. And you know what? That's fine. People play games for different reasons. Right? The only reason that I'm raising all of these things as an issue is because that's what I think they are. They are issues. I'm not asking for you to agree with me. I'm just asking for you to understand. I want to inspire some positive change. I want to shed light on the issues that I think are holding the game back, because I want to enjoy my time. I want to play as a Space Marine with my mates. But it's not there yet. It's really not there yet. It's being held back.
Hey everyone, I thought I'd take it outside for this last part because Lord knows I've spent way too long inside editing this video, so glad it's finally over. Thank you to everybody who watched the video and making it to the end. Huge thank you again to all the friends and family that helped throughout the process of making this video. As always, your help is very much appreciated. If you've come from any of my other stuff, you know that this is a little different, you know, aside from the cannoli reveal. But yeah, it's a bit of a different direction that I'm taking it in, so would appreciate any feedback on what you guys got to say. Hopefully it was still somewhat entertaining, but I've decided to aim to provide something with just a little bit more substance. I was just concerned that a lot of the stuff that I was making was, I don't know, brain rotted. And I mean, that makes sense. I've got my problems. Anyway, so your feedback on that would be very much appreciated. And just to reaffirm it, I mean, I don't think this really needs to be said, but I'll say it anyway. Look, it's okay to like the game. If you've enjoyed it and you like it and you have fun with it, that's fine. I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong. It's subjective whether or not you enjoy something. I just looked at what I thought were objective failures with it, things that were wrong with it, and just expressed my lack of confidence in the future of the game. Because I mean, sure, they've been updating it for they've been updating it since it came out. And throughout the entirety of making this video, I was constantly faced with examining what they had done and making changes. But throughout that whole period, it was clear that it just wasn't enough to change it. And I don't have any confidence in the future of the game. Like, for me, it's done. I don't see a way how they can bring me back, and I'm sure others feel the same. I feel as though it's in a really bad place, and there's not much that can be done with it. And it's a real shame, because I feel like it was very much hyped up and it had a lot of potential, and it was just let down. I really think it failed to meet the mark. And, you know, you can call me an idiot for expecting anything different in this day and age when it comes to big AAA releases, but yeah, I guess I'm an idiot. You live and you learn. But look, if you enjoyed it, that's fine. I hope you got some enjoyment out of it. And again, like I said, I'm not asking for you to agree with me. I'm sure I got a couple of things wrong, and I'm happy to hear about how I got those things wrong. I'm just asking for you to understand what I'm saying. If you can understand what I'm saying, you know, and whether you agree with that or disagree with it, that's fine. But if you can understand what I'm saying, then I'm happy. I'm happy that I was able to somewhat articulate and convey what I was trying to say. But yeah, I also want to say thank you to a couple of people in particular, Tanner Lindbergh and Clay Aesthetics. They were some of the only people I saw that made honest reviews about the state of the game, because before it came out, and then officially when it came out, there were so many videos by people that I think did not do it justice at all. Like, their reviews just completely failed to honestly cover the true nature of the game, and it's really disappointing, because some of them were people that, you know, I figured you could trust, but, you know, again, you live and you learn. Anyway, so huge thank you to those guys, because not only were they honest, they also helped inspire me to take my videos in a different direction. Because, look, it's all good to be funny, but, you know, at the end of the day, it probably helps to provide something of just a little bit of substance. But look, I'll link their videos in the description. Please check out their stuff. They do good work. So thank you. And just to expand on that further, I was initially going to have a section in this video discussing the broader context surrounding the game in terms of how it was hyped and kind of how it was perceived, because it was perceived very positively, and I still believe it is so now. I haven't checked in a bit, and I don't really care to. But I just find that hard to understand, because when you play the game, if you're willing to look for it, you can very easily find problems with it, is my opinion. And I just don't understand how it got such a positive reception. And I also can't understand how there were just a lot of things, a lot of practices that were implemented that somehow got a free pass, or they just didn't seem to stir up the same amount of controversy as they would in other titles. And that also was just really hard for me to understand. And I can't help but feel, but it's just because it's got the 40K label slapped on it. And I mean, yeah, sure. But, I mean, whatever. But yeah, there was a section that I intended to include about the broader context surrounding it, but I cut that for the sake of time, and that's probably something that I'll include in another video at another time. So yeah, just stay tuned for that, I guess. And I suppose the last thing I want to mention is, look, there were a few people that I considered quite guilty of, it's a bit of a nasty word, but a few people that I considered being shills. They shilled the game more or less. And, you know, I left messages on some of their videos and had discussions with a couple of them. And the matter of the fact is that was quite pointless. So I do wish to extend an apology in that regard. I may not necessarily condone what you do and how you conduct yourself, but it's not really any of my fucking business, you know? So for that, I apologise. Do as thou will. Not my place to judge. The only thing I could ever ask of anyone is to, you know, consider what people do and why they might do it. You know, the reason why I wanted to take these videos in a different direction now is because I just want to be a little bit more respectful of, you know, your time and mine. I would like to expand on this and see it grow, and, you know, that's why I would like to move to provide something of substance. But piano, we'll get there in time. And with that all said and done, I think that's it. I don't really want to cover shit games going forward. I just want to play good games. I want to cover good games, games that are fun, not too problematic, that are enjoyable. Because making videos, talking shit about stuff it's not that fun. It's not that fun. You know, but look, it is what it is. So, happy holidays to everyone, if you're still enjoying them, wherever you are, whatever you do. Take care. Spend time with your family, friends, the important people in your life. Have fun, and don't be a fucking idiot. Because I blew up my fucking hand on the barbecue the other day because I'm a fucking idiot. But, you know, it is what it is. So, yeah, as always, that's enough out of me. Take care of yourselves, touch some grass, and I'll see you all next time. Ciao ragazzi.
You guys want to finish off on something funny? Check this out.